Alright guys, so today we're making a very different tier list. We're going to be evaluating classes based on their fun. Now, the first thing to get out of the way, obviously, is fun in a video game, when it comes to picking classes, is entirely subjective. Now, I played Wrath back in the day, been playing it on private servers for the past 6-7 years, and obviously played a lot of classes on the beta too. And I follow a lot of streamers, and I have a lot of friends who play multiple different classes, and I've seen how they play. So I think I can have a decent crack out of evaluating these classes based on their fun, but again, just bear in mind, it is totally subjective to my opinion. Let me explain to you what I find fun in a class personally. For me, it's really high skill ceilings. Certain classes that have good play styles where there's quite a lot to learn. There's a lot to do in the game to pump harder, get better logs, better DPS on the meters or healing or tanking, whatever. You know, for a good few months of logging into the game and playing that same class, you're either going to learn something new or you're going to get slightly better at doing something when it comes to playing that class to improve your gameplay. Rather than classes that, you know, you just have to spam one or two buttons and there you go, you've mastered it, like the Warlock in TBC. That's how I normally evaluate whether a class is fun or not. It's thoughtful and interesting gameplay. So anyway, we're going to go spec by spec. Let's get the big one out of the way, the pretty obvious one. I'm obviously going to put Unholy in S tier. By the way, we're doing 3 tiers because I can't really call any of your classes in Wrath of the Lich King a C tier when it comes to fun, because overall I do think basically all the specs in Wrath of the Lich King are way more fun than they were in Classic and TBC. Now, when it comes to Unholy, there's definitely a lot to learn in order to master this class. It's going to keep you interested for a long period of time, and it's also just generally really fun at playstyle, especially now as we are dual wielding. So many different buttons to mash, so many different procs to take account of, and so many buffs to track, and it is really satisfying when you get really good RNG to snapshot a big beefy gargoyle. You also get to be a semi-ranged, semi-melee, and a pet class all in one, so really the best elements of all those different playstyles all combined into one perfect spec, in my humble opinion. Now, I'm going to put Frost and Blood in A tier. Now, the only reason for that is because these classes are really fun, but they get boring pretty quickly. You know, Frost is a fairly simple and cyclic rotation, still difficult to actually master and get all the top logs and everything, but still it's so straightforward and simplified, and the same really goes for Blood as well. These aren't overcomplicated classes. And honestly, I think the same goes for the Rogue specs and the Retribution Paladin. They are very fun to play. They're very fun classes, but eventually you do discover that, yeah, the rotations are fairly cyclic, and eventually they do get fairly repetitive. But again, that is just me. I just get bored of specs like that with a simpler rotation faster than, let's say, the next person does. By the way guys, still only 25% of the people watching my videos are actually subscribed. I promise you, if we get this to 30%, I'm going to dye my hair green and make a video. I absolutely promise you. So if you want to see that happen, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We also have great subscriber-only content, so go and check that out. Now we'll finish off talking about the other Paladin specs. Now I'm going to put Holy in B tier. Reason for this is, well, I just don't think for Paladin, I imagine they're much more fun in PvP, but in PvE you don't really have as much variety when it comes to playstyles as the other healers. I mean, a good part of your life really is just pressing one button, spamming Holy Light, and topping the healers anyway. And obviously, in this video I'm going to be harsh on healers because in general I really don't find healers that fun, so someone else might put these higher on the list because they find healers more fun. Personally, I just kind of don't. Protection, that just has a safe A tier, always a fairly fun tank to play, great AoE threat, and you don't have all of the minor irritations and gripes that you did have obviously in classic vanilla WoW, and less so TBC, but you still had a few gripes in TBC. Most of that is totally gone, like for instance needing spell power as a paladin, like, you know, what's that about? Now you don't, you can just put strength gear like a normal paladin. Mages now, so first of all let's go with Arcane. Now, Arcane can be fun, kind of, When you start to really try to min-max your gameplay as an arcane mage, like experimenting with different rotation patterns in order to optimize your mana consumption, so if you finish a fight with like no mana left and you've pumped the most amount of damage that you can. But again, there's not a lot, is there? There's not a lot to learn when it comes to an arcane mage, because it really is just spamming one button and then occasionally you spam arcane missile so you don't run out of mana. It's nowhere near interesting as the other mage spec, which is obviously fire, which has extremely satisfying procs. It actually has a rotation, and your rotation can change in different situations. And obviously living bomb AoE damage is extremely satisfying too. I also think Frost Mage is incredibly fun to play, but I'm exclusively here obviously talking about PvP. You don't really play Frost that much in PvE, let's be honest. I had a lot of fun playing a mage. The Frost spec just has so much utility, and you can just pull off so many like really cool plays to outclass most other classes. Everyone always knows like Frost Mage is so fun to play in PvP. Now, when it comes to the Druid is the class I've admittedly the least experience with, but I can definitely see that a lot of people, a lot of streamers that I have, friends that I have, they really seem to love their Druids, and they wouldn't play them if they weren't fun. Okay, so I'm automatically just going to put basically all of them in A tier, because I think they're all fun specs, but my slight bias is going to put Balance in S tier and Feral in S tier too. I think Feral has, again, a high skill ceiling, something to keep you busy every time you log in, more difficult to master the spec, and they're also great when it comes to their utility in PvP, and I normally seem to favour classes with great utility in PvP, because when you're a class in PvP and you are really pinned down and limited by your own utility, that can get unfun, especially when you get outplayed by a class with great utility. Now, when it comes to the Shaman, I am admittedly going to be a bit harsh with the Elemental Shaman and put him in B tier. Now, I imagine there's some people out there who absolutely love the Shaman spec. Again, this is my opinion, but again, I just find the rotation itself pretty simple, and then you're also just kind of like not that great. I mean, obviously you're not really a absolute top tier DPS, so you can have a lot of fun pumping big numbers on a boring class like Warlock in TBC, so you don't really have that to make up of it. I guess you have loads of great support, but like, I don't know, some people like playing a support class, I guess. I like playing it in League of Legends, but I don't really enjoy it that much in World of Warcraft. Just my opinion. In the past, though, very weirdly, I have had a lot of fun playing a Resto Shaman. Chain Heal and all your totems are really fun buttons to press. And Enhancement, I like Enhancement for the same reasons I like Unholy, really. You know, it is going to take you a fair while to master the class. It's going to keep you interested. It really combines the fun elements of dual-wielding melee DPS like your Rogue, Frost DK, your Fury Warrior 2, with that hybrid style of also being a healer. Now let's do the Warlock. I'm immediately going to put Demonology in the top tree. I think a Metamorphosis cooldown is one of the coolest, most satisfying and fun abilities in the game. I've said that a number of times on this channel. Warlocks are way more fun now. They actually have rotations, and they do actually keep their pets in a raiding environment, so there's just an extra layer of, or of anything, of meat to the class, an extra layer of complexity, although complexity is a strong word, let's be honest, it's World of Warcraft, not EVE Online. The Affliction's going to go straight up there as well. I've always liked the dot snapshotting playstyle, like I have liked it with the Unholy DK as well when it is viable later on in Wrath of Lich King's lifetime. There is a lot of depth to the Affliction Warlock that will, again, keep you interested for a long period of time. It is not a pump and dump class, it is one you want to stick around with and try and master. Destruction's also going to go in A tier. It's a very, very fun class, but the rotation is fairly simple, and in my experience, you know, I do get bored of it eventually. I actually played Destruction all the way through the pre-patch in Sunwell. It was fun, very easy to pick up and master. If I was playing that for the whole of Wrath of Lich King, yeah, I'm going to get bored of that spec. Now, for the Warriors. To be honest, Warriors automatically, all of them are going in S tier. Warrior has always been one of the most fun classes in this game. Even though that, you know, the Warrior is seen as you know, fairly unviable in Wrath of the Lich King, at least early on in Wrath of the Lich King's lifetime, and that they have fairly straightforward rotations. You know, it is in essence a simple priority system, but it's still incredibly fun to play, and I still feel like because the combat and rotation and playstyle is so action-packed and fast-paced, it just kind of makes up for the fact that it is, you know, fairly straightforward. And even then, there's loads of like neat little tricks that a warrior can do to juice up their DPS. They obviously have some decent utility also in PvP, despite the fact they are absolute freight trains in PvP. And a protection warrior is also an insane freight train. You know, an insanely good cleave DPS that is very, very fun, satisfying to play. You know, it's quite fun out DPSing rep paladins in protection spec. Don't listen to these nosebleeders who say Protection Warrior is bad in Wrath of the Lich King. Yeah, you can argue that the other tanks are like, you know, a hairline better, but who cares? Like, Protection Warrior is like the Chad spec in this game. Honestly guys, just crack on and love it and play it. No one's ever going to complain that a tank turned up, are they? Now for the Shadow Priest. Again, the Shadow Priest, it's fairly similar to, you know, the Unholy Death Knight and the Affliction Warlock. I don't really need to repeat the reasons as to why I put them in S tier. It's basically the same reason. Obviously, there's some differences to the Shadow Priest, which are pretty cool, some cool little niches. They also finally have a really cool AoE ability, which absolutely slaps. So they've got that, they don't have to manually dot everything, which can get quite tedious after a while. Now, with this Priest, definitely putting this in B tier. I mean, the problem is with the Disc Priest is you can literally just get top of the meters at pretty much every single time by spamming one absorb ability on everyone all the time. Again, the playstyle isn't very varied. I mean, it probably can be from time to time, but a lot of the time you are just spamming one button over and over again. If you find that fun, then, you know, knock yourself out, but I've never found Disc Priest to be fun in any shape or form. I find the Holy Priest more fun, even though it's less viable, because at least you actually do more than one spell all the time. I'm not saying the Disc Priest literally just spams Power Word Shield all the time, because obviously they're not going to in every single environment like in a 5-man. But still, like, I still feel like the Holy Priest just has better and more varied and interesting playstyles. Now, when it comes to the Hunter specs, from my experience, I really enjoy playing Survival and Marksman, and because Hunter is always an extremely fun class to play, let's be honest, whether it's leveling or doing anything as a hunter, it's always very, very fun, pretending to run around and be Legolas. But what I have to admit, though, is Beast Mastery, I mean, for the same reasons as the other specs, you know, it is fairly straightforward, pretty easy to pick up, still quite fun to play, but again, that would not keep me interested for the whole of Wrath of the Lich King's lifetime. And for some reason, I forgot to put Subtlety Rogue in the tier list. Sorry, Subtlety Rogues. Definitely going to put them in S tier because obviously we're evaluating that purely on PvP. I mean, you are never ever going to find Subtlety Rogue unfun in Arena. You just simply not. Unless you just, you know, it's too difficult for you to pick up, or I just can't see it personally. Like, it is so fun to play in Arena, and it always has been. You have great gap closers, you have great utility, you have great damage. You have so many fun and satisfying abilities. You can reset combat fair few times, so just, you know, if you make a mistake, you can just be like, oh, you know what, I can just try that again. Like, no, pretty sure no other class really has that, apart from maybe Mage that can ice block, but like, when a Mage is an ice block, the health doesn't come back, whereas a Rogue can stealth and just totally reset combat. And even though ganking people in the open world is an incredible scumbag thing to do, if we're all honest with ourselves, it is also an incredibly fun thing to do. You know, you can't be a total scumbag in real life. I mean, well, you can, but there generally is real life consequences which can bite you in the backside. But if you're a scumbag in World of Warcraft, it's fine. You can get away with it. You can fulfill that alter ego fantasy of being an absolute dodgepot, malicious cretin in a fantasy world as a Subtlety Rogue. In fact, it is probably quite good for your soul to really just get that kind of stuff out of your system. But anyway, I'm definitely chatting absolute shit right now. let's try and end the video. My name is MetaGoblin. To the next video, ciao.